Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 381 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, we're going to be speaking with Brent. Brent has had type 1 diabetes for 20 years. He's been married for a long time, and he's got 3 kids. Brent's progression with type 1 diabetes has been steady but slow, and it's really coming together for him. So he's here to tell you his story. In fact, this is Brent's story. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're looking for a terrific endocrinologist or have one that you'd like to share with people, please go to juiceboxdocs.com. And if you're enjoying the pro tip series of the podcast and like to share that with someone, or if you're looking to see the episodes all in one place without using your podcast app, you're looking for diabetesprotip.com. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Please visit contournext.com/juicebox to learn more about the Contour Next One. There's so much information at this link, I don't even know where you'll begin. But where I'm going to start is by telling you about Arden's blood glucose meter. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter is incredibly accurate and cheaply priced. It's actually possible that the test strips purchased directly with cash could be cheaper than what you're paying through your copay with your insurance company. Wouldn't that be interesting? Check it out. While you're there, you're going to see all of the Contour products listed right at the top. There's resources such as downloadable logbooks and the Contour Diabetes app that works in conjunction with the meter. That's available for Apple or iPhone. It's even possible that you could be eligible for a free Contour Next One meter. Seriously, you got to go click around on those links. There's a test strip savings card there. It's worth picking around and learning about everything, not just about Arden's meter. But if you're in the market for a new meter, I can't say enough good things about the Contour Next One. It's absolutely been the most accurate meter my daughter has ever used. I'd also like to direct your attention to touchedbytype1.org. It's a great diabetes organization doing wonderful things with people living with type 1 diabetes, and they'd love it if you check them out on Facebook, Instagram, or at touchedbytype1.org.
My name's Brent. I live in Payson, Utah. It's a town about an hour south of Salt Lake. I have had type 1 diabetes for just a tad over 20 years. I've been married for a little over 10 years. I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. My oldest son is 8. My daughter is 4, and my youngest son is 1, almost 2.
Brent, do me a favor. That cord with the microphone, I try not to brush by it or let it touch your clothes, okay?
Okay.
That's all. Otherwise, sounds terrific, and I appreciate you telling us about yourself. How old were you when you were diagnosed?
So I was 17. It happened over Christmas break of all times. I believe that was the Christmas break of 1999 to 2000. So I always just go off of 2000 since that's kind of an easy time to remember how long I've had it.
Brent, you know what? It's funny. We all put so much effort into being worried about Y2K and what would happen to computers, and we should have been worried about what was going to happen to your pancreas.
Yeah, I had no worries about Y2K.
Me either.
Didn't bother me at all.
I do remember being in a number of meetings at my job, and I just kept thinking, I feel like we're making a big deal out of this, and the computer's just going to say, it's January 1st, 2000, here we go. But Such an odd thing. Anyway, tell me about your diagnosis a little bit.
Yeah. So, and my memories kind of fade a little bit, the older I get. But I remember it being a Sunday morning, pretty typical Sunday morning. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, growing up here in Utah. But anyways, did my regular thing and getting ready for church and going to church. And while we were there at church, I remember a couple people saying, "It looks like you're a little thin." And I just brushed that comment kind of off. I didn't really think anything of it. And after coming home from church that day, I was not feeling good at all. I just wanted to lay down and do nothing.
Yeah.
I was the kind of kid that, wanted to be playing video games all the time or watching TV or something. But for some reason, I just wanted to lay down and do nothing. I was using the bathroom a ton during the night. I think I got up at least once an hour. But anyways, after church, my parents had noticed that I was just doing nothing. And we had a friend that lived pretty close by who was a doctor. So he came over and kind of checked me out. And he had told my parents that I need to go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital. I don't remember other much than checking into the hospital and, they ran some more tests and, told me I had diabetes. I had really no idea what that meant. I think I spent the course of the next couple days or 3 days in the hospital learning about all I could and how to kind of manage it from there.
Did anyone ever tell you what your blood sugar was at your time of diagnosis?
I don't remember the exact number, but I remember it was over 600. So it was pretty high.
That's why you weren't playing video games.
Whatever. Yeah.
And take it right out
why
of you.
I was.
All right, Brent, listen, we've got to dig down on something for a second here. Because since you listened through the entire show, you said in like a month and a half. So you're aware, and I've never been able to put my finger on this yet, but I ask every time to try to get closer to the answer. Why is the show so popular with Mormons? And why do they come on all the time? And like, you have to be the 6th or 7th, perhaps? Like, have you heard them as they're talking? Sometimes people don't identify themselves right away. Sometimes I out them for having like 43 kids or something like that, and I'm like, hey. So, but is there anything about the community is diabetes more prevalent? That doesn't make any sense, but is that possible?
I don't think it's any more prevalent around here anyways. I mean, I found the podcast and it seemed really interesting, listening to you and how you talked about your daughter, finding out she had diabetes. And
no kidding.
It was just really interesting, and it hit me because, I've had it for, at the time it was only 19 and a half years when I had started listening, but, I've had it for 20 years and I've really not connected with a lot of other type 1 diabetics.
So maybe it's the opposite. Maybe there's just nobody in Utah, so everybody there needs to find. Am I I might be the Mitt Romney of type 1 diabetes podcasting. It's possible. Is this not true? If you were to say that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I really haven't listened to any other.
Just found this one.
Yeah, I found this one, and it just
no kidding
clicked right off, and I
listen. I'm
really
thrilled.
liked it.
I would like people of all religions to listen. I'm just telling you that it just comes up so frequently. I'm now wondering how many people I've interviewed who did not tell me. Is it possible I've interviewed 306 people from the church? I don't know. Anyway,
I suppose it's possible.
So how did you find growing up? And 20 years ago, what kind of technology did they start you with?
So I remember just syringes and vials is what it was. Mm-hmm. I've used Humalog for most of my Diabetes Life. That's what I used then, and I think it was Humulin was what the other one was called, the long-acting one. Yeah.
What was it? So I'm sorry to cut you off. Did your parents jump in and help? Because that's a weird age at 17. Or did they do the, like, he's a man, he'll handle it? Like, where did that fall? And how did that impact you, however it went?
So I do remember me handling most of it. I mean, my parents, they were there in the hospital learning about it just as much as I was. Mm-hmm. But, I was practically an adult. Yeah. So, I just pretty much handled everything on my own, short of, setting up doctor appointments and insurance and that kind of thing. But, sure. Managing the diabetes, I pretty much handled it on my own from what I remember.
Were your outcomes what you were looking for? Like, I'm interested how a 17-year-old, 20 years ago with some syringes and some, insulin we don't use anymore. Like, was your health where you wanted it to be, or was that a constant struggle, or was it not thought of that way at the time?
I mean, I honestly don't remember too much about how I did way back then. I will tell you this. So later that summer, 2000, I got an early graduation gift from my sister also. And there's this, I think it's kind of a high school program, national throughout the country. It's called People to People Student Ambassadors. Have you heard of that?
I have not, no. But it was coming
so
eventually.
What it is, yeah. So what that is, it's a program that's available to youth, basically. Mm-hmm. And they go on a big trip somewhere around the world and experience other cultures.
Okay.
And anyway, so that summer, my parents had bought my sister and I, well, we actually, helped pay for it ourselves too. We went into this program. I think our particular group, there was about 30 or 40 youth and, 5 or 6 adult leaders. Mm-hmm. And we went to Scandinavia for 3 weeks. So here I am. I'm only 6 months newly diagnosed. I don't remember having any or not very many worries about my diabetes and taking, all the supplies I needed to go with me.
Yeah.
They had us keep a journal as part of the program. And I don't remember writing anything about my diabetes rather than just everything I was experiencing.
Right. Well, is that because the insulin back then, what you were doing is you were shooting insulin a couple times a day at certain times and then making sure to eat at certain times. Is that about it?
Yeah. So, I was doing my normal mealtime boluses, if you will, mm-hmm. Taking the insulin for meals. And then I was doing the Humulin, I believe, a shot in the morning and a shot at night.
And how do you find, like, how you manage now compared to that? So how do you manage now?
I have been using a pump since 2015, a tandem pump. And I'm actually just got started on my second tandem pump just this past November.
So you were 16 years on MDI?
Yes,
excellent.
That is correct. I did okay. I wouldn't say I did great. And this might have been around maybe 2005. My blood sugars or my A1c, I would say was probably between 10 and 13. So, I mean, it wasn't the greatest.
Right.
And I wonder, I was also, the doctor I was seeing was just a family physician. So he wasn't anybody specialized in diabetes. Mm-hmm. But it eventually turned to a point where he recommended me to a diabetes doctor. And I was able to reduce my A1c a bit with that. I think I got it down between 9 and 10%. So, that was a pretty significant improvement.
Yeah. You moved it from what, like more like, and was it swinging around like 10, 11, 12, like, or did you not check? How often were you checking it, I guess is my question.
I was probably only checking 3 times a day, I would guess.
Your blood sugar 3 times a day. And did you go to an endo appointment quarterly, or was it not that frequent?
I mean, with the family physician, I think it might have been maybe every 3 to 6 months. So maybe quarterly.
Gotcha. See, now you've listened to the podcast straight through. As you're listening, do you think, wow, the way people are doing it now is it's just not close to what I was doing growing up? Did you have that thought ever while you were listening?
I've had it a few times. I mean, it's understandable too. I mean, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
so, I mean, things were a lot different back 20 years ago.
Yeah, no, 1,000,000%.
Definitely blood sugar machines. When I was first started, I used a lot of one-touch machines. And the first one I had, thing was huge. And the test strip was huge. And it required tons of blood compared to the blood sugar machines today.
Do you think was that part of the impediment around testing more, or was there just not an onus on testing more? Nobody was, like, you were testing enough for your doctor.
I think I was testing enough for my doctor.
Brent, what about for you though? Like, how did you feel with A1Cs that were that high? Was it an impediment? Did your body adjust to it? Is it something you look back on now and worry about?
I mean, yeah, I do worry about it. I mean, obviously that's not a great A1C and whatnot, but I mean, I'm still alive today.
I really appreciate you being on because, I mean, the podcast is 5 years old. So you're talking to people who are mostly brought up around faster acting insulin, their carb counting, covering meals, testing more frequently, wearing glucose monitors, that kind of stuff. And I think that people sometimes make the mistake of believing that that's just how it is and how it's always been. And, like that's it. And even today, there are more people in the world with diabetes who have a story that's like yours than a story like theirs. Than those people who are listening going, oh my gosh, like, my A1C is in the 7s and I'm always wanting to get it down. And, like I know what my blood sugar is all the time, etc. I think we all need to really remember that most people don't have access to good information, tools, and sometimes, even, the meters and the glucose monitors and the pumps and etc. Even smart bands, it's easy to like get caught in a bubble and think that this is how it is. But I think it's more the way you're describing, honestly.
Yeah, it most certainly is. I mean, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's right. I got you up early in the morning. What time is it there?
It's just after 7. I get up at 5:30 here because I actually start work normally at 7 o'clock.
Oh, no kidding. Do you work from home? Or you?
I actually work. I commute. I've got about a half an hour-ish commute.
I appreciate you making time for this. I really do.
Yeah, no, I felt this was pretty important, so I.
Well, what did you
ask?
Did you ask for time off for this?
I just told him I was going to come in later.
Oh, thank you very much. Look at this.
I'll still work my normal time.
This is the level of dedication, Brent, I expect from everyone listening to the show, just so you know. Brent listened to all of the episodes. He didn't say, oh, I didn't think that one would be interesting. I don't want to hear that from you people. Listen all the way through. And if I need you to get up early to be on the podcast, that's just what you have to do. Just kidding. Brent, what made it feel important to be on the podcast?
I just wanted to share my story, hear, let the listeners hear kind of another story. I mean, that's what got me into this podcast, was hearing your daughter's story and, the change in your life, her life, your whole family's life. Just, having another point of view, basically.
Yeah. So did it help you more like spiritually, like psychologically, or was it helpful management wise, or what did you, what's happened after hearing all those experiences?
I would say all the above. I mean, it's, I think I've tried to get myself more involved with other type 1 diabetics since kind of even listening to this podcast. And, it's just kind of helped me even reflect on myself and how I manage my own diabetes.
Where are you meeting people? Is it online or in person?
Yeah, it's mainly through Facebook groups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of the main part. I have some family that's got type 1 diabetes and some pretty close friends that has it. But, aside from that, it's mainly been just online.
Yeah. Do you find yourself talking about it more since you've listened, or have you always been kind of open and conversational about it?
I've been pretty open about talking about it, but I think I do feel like I have been more open to talking about my diabetes to people since I have been listening to the podcast.
Okay. That's excellent. Hold on one second. Arden is asking me a question.
Okay.
Let's see. Her blood sugar got a little low and she's in class. She's trying to, she's treated already, but her blood sugar hasn't popped back up yet. And she's just like, my phone won't shut up. So, she's had this very interesting, well, this is ridiculous.
Solar people?
You know what? Most likely. And then all the everything I gave her as, hey, try this or this, she goes, not right now. So why are you telling me about the phone if you're not willing to? All right, listen, let's not try to make sense of children, I guess. So her blood sugars have just required less insulin for the last over a week now. And at first, I know everybody's going to laugh at me, but what is this? What is this? What the hell? So I don't have a January electric statement. That's not why they're calling. They're lying to me. Sorry about that. So her blood sugars have been lower, and everyone's going to laugh because, I always say, like, don't just say they're sick. I think they're getting a cold. But when Arden has certain kinds of illnesses, her blood sugar just is easier to control. She needs less insulin. It's always been that way. So when this happened, we just assumed that's what was happening. We started cutting insulin back, the way we normally do, but it still wasn't helping. And she was, still just lower, but she'd also kind of lost her appetite. So we thought, all right, and it made it even worse. You couldn't, she doesn't want to eat a whole lot. You're trying to bolus. You don't really know how much to do. So her blood sugar's been a little up and down for the last few days.
Uh-huh.
And finally last night, I thought, so Arden just recently got an infusion of iron, and her ferritin level was very low, which happens to me too, and it happened to her. So she'd been tired and run down, and it had gone on for a long time. And through the process of trying to diagnose this, we went through a lot of different things. One of them being thinking it was her hypothyroid medication, because the symptoms of low iron and hypothyroidism so perfectly match each other that made sense. So,
yes, it does.
You know what I mean? So we lost a lot of time, and Arden spent a lot of time feeling run down. And now she's had the iron for a month or so, and you can see her changing. Like, she's got more energy. She's not as tired. She looks better. Like, all this stuff's happening.
Right.
But she doesn't feel perfect yet, which we didn't expect. And even the doctor that she saw, who was a hematologist, told her, listen, it's going to take 2 to 3 months for you to feel the complete effects of this iron transfusion or infusion, excuse me. And, so he told her, like, 2 more months from now, however good you feel then, that's how good you're going to feel from this. But I started wondering out loud yesterday with Kelly, is it possible that as her cells are dying off and regenerating, but regenerating now being built from building blocks that have the correct amount of iron and ferritin in them, that's how she's feeling better? But could that be why her insulin needs have been higher? Because Arden's basal rate is significantly higher than I would expect it to be. And it's not just like around food. Like, you're a grown man. What's your basal rate?
It varies. I have a schedule, but I think it's anywhere between 0.9 an hour to 1.3 3 an hour.
Right. So my 140-pound daughter, who's 15, her basal rate during the day has been 2.6.
Wow.
Right. And so that's just a lot. And now,
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. So all of a sudden yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't a thing maybe that's going to go away. Like, we're going to have to adjust to this maybe forever, and let's try. So I pared all of her settings down pretty significantly, had a lot of success overnight. But of course, this was my first daytime with it. And she got to school, and it's just, it was doing great. And then all of a sudden it dropped down, and now it just does not seem to want to move again. So that is the
Yeah,
place.
that's interesting.
Hold on a second. So I'm going to get her to test, and we're going to check it out. Now, who knows? I could end up being wrong about this, and 3 days from now, her blood sugars might go right back to the way they were. I don't know, but it's a significant difference in the amount of insulin she needs. Like, significant.
Yeah, well, hopefully she gets her numbers back to where they should be, and hopefully you get that figured out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do.
Of course.
So how do you find pumping versus how you were doing it for so long? Because it's very much interesting to talk to somebody who basically lived a lifetime not using an insulin pump and now uses one.
I love it. I will say that right off. It's great, and I don't know how I lived without it. So back in 2015, that's when my daughter was born.
Okay.
And she had some complications with being born that year, and she ended up being in the NICU for 18 or 19 days, which, that's traumatic in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But, towards the end of the year, I had started researching pumps, what pumps I want to use, which one I think is going to be the best for me. I should say a few years before that, I ended up switching doctors to another one up in Salt Lake who has type 1 diabetes himself. And I actually still see him to this day. He's the best. I think it's, if you can find a doctor that has type 1 diabetes himself, yeah. I don't know if you're going to get any better than that, because they understand everything. They have a different perspective than somebody who doesn't, if that makes sense.
No, of course.
But anyways, so 2015, I had researched a few different pumps. I had even considered Omnipod. And I think I was considering another Medtronic one. But I finally emailed my doctor and saying, here's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this Medtronic pump. I think I was really liking it because it talked with my glucose meter. I think it was the Contour Next One Link or something. It talked Bluetooth with it anyways. Anyways, I emailed him. He actually recommended that I also look into CGM. And I actually hadn't even heard of it, which was quite interesting, I guess.
Well, you had no contact with people with diabetes, right? So
yeah,
you wouldn't have heard.
I mean, I didn't really know anything. I mean, I knew what an insulin pump was.
Yeah.
But he had recommended 2 pumps for me. He had first mentioned the Animus Vibe, which I don't think is even available anymore.
That's gone now.
Because it integrated with Dexcom's CGM. Oh, and the first thing he had told me is he wouldn't recommend me doing the Medtronic thing because their CGM, he says, wasn't very good. He outright said that Dexcom is the best.
Right.
And, his opinion kind of changed my mind pretty quickly just because I trusted him and I knew him pretty well.
Right.
The other pump he recommended was the Tandem T-Slim G4 at the time is what it was. And it was going to be integrating with Dexcom soon. And that's the pump that I chose, ended up using. So I've been with Dexcom since G4.
Yeah, because that Animus Vibe, how did that work with the G4 back then? Did they they didn't actually speak to each other, did they? Or they did it? Oh, you know what it was? You could see your CGM data on your pump. Is that right?
Yes.
But
that's correct.
It wasn't telling it what to do, like a closed loop or like an algorithm or anything like that, right?
No, nothing like that. I believe you were required to calibrate every 12 hours, I believe.
That's how I remember it too.
But yeah, the pump didn't do anything based off any of the readings other than just showing you constantly what your blood sugar was, which was huge. I mean, poking my fingers for 15 years, 16 years, or whatever it was.
Got a little old?
Yeah. I mean, my fingers were pretty calloused.
So you're like, you probably had those fingers like you saw, like people see sometimes online, which, you know, more newly diagnosed people don't know from, but those hard bumps all like everywhere because you're constantly looking for space on your fingers, and eventually after years and years and years they just don't heal as quickly, and it's stark, right? Like you can see it when you're looking.
Yeah.
Can I ask how did that affect tactilely, like touching things and lifting things? Did it have an impact on that?
I didn't seem to notice too much. I don't know if this was the right thing to do, but I would sometimes take fingernail clippers and try and kind of clip away the callus a little bit.
Take them away? You're doing your own landscaping there on your diabetes callus?
Yeah, I did that every once in a while. I don't know.
Don't worry, Brent. We will cover that with a nothing on the Juicebox podcast is considered advice at the beginning. So that's funny. It worked, right? Hey, I guess whatever works, right? Diabetes is a lot about, you know, making adjustments on the go and sort of, you know, being your own MacGyver and figuring things out, you know, for yourself.
Yeah.
If you tell me two more things that you made up during this episode, you're going to be the Mormon MacGyver, just so you know, on the on the episode. So, hey, listen, tell me a little bit about having kids when you have type 1.
It didn't really bother me at all. I mean, I didn't really think of it much. I mean, I know the symptoms. I know what to do if, you know, we find out things. Luckily, all three of my kids are not type 1 diabetics. But you know what? If they were, I'm not going to love them any less, and I'm going to know how to help them. And, you know, I'm going to be able to basically coach them through it and that kind of thing if they were.
Yeah, you'd have a leg up. You're kind of, if your children ended up with diabetes, it would sort of be like what you were saying about seeing a doctor who has type 1. It's just an extra level of understanding.
Yeah. It's an extra level of care.
Yeah, that's excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, what are your goals now that you're pumping and you have a glucose monitor? What do you, like, do you have goals with your A1c, or how do you think of it? Because you are coming from an old school idea of this, so I'm interested in what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I mean, I see my endocrinologist every quarter, still every 3 months. Mm-hmm. And we have a goal of keeping it well below 7%. And I usually do that pretty good. My last A1c was 6.7. I have been as low as 6.3 before. But, you know, just basically under 7% is kind of the goal with that.
Does it fluctuate greatly quarter to quarter?
Not usually. It's usually pretty close between, I'd say it's usually between 6.5 and 6.8.
Okay.
And, you know, that's pretty good, and definitely a huge improvement over when I first started.
Right. Oh, no, my gosh.
Yeah, I stay pretty consistently, pretty close to that. The only exception was last year when I was in between jobs. I didn't have a month of Dexcom.
Okay.
And it was just interesting to see how much it affected my A1c and blood sugar without having that for a month. I think my A1c got to 7.5. Not horrible, but I mean, I hadn't been over 7 for years.
So you moved anywhere from a half to a full point just from losing your glucose monitor for 1 month.
Yeah, the CGM, the Dexcom.
What did that change for you, not having it? Like, do you remember that feeling of like, what's going to happen to me when I'm losing my CGM? How do I go back to what I was doing before?
Yeah, I was part of some groups on Facebook and an app called Help Around, which, it's type 1 diabetics, trying to help each other, giving them supplies and that kind of thing. I was almost in a panic to try and find some supplies that somebody can give me.
Yeah.
Just because, I hadn't been without a CGM for years.
Right.
And, I didn't end up finding anything, unfortunately. I mean, I got some supplies, but they didn't end up working. I even went back as far as trying to find some G4 supplies, just so I could see my graph,
you were just looking
see
for
what was going on.
Listen, your unemployment story is much better than most people's. You were only out of work for a month.
So I wasn't out of work.
Oh.
What happened was I had switched jobs February last year, and insurance wouldn't kick in until I had been there 90 days.
I see.
And I had enough of my leftover CGM supply to last for 2 months.
Yeah.
But then I had that third month where I wasn't going to go pay out of pocket for the supplies either. I had plenty of pump supplies, so I didn't have to get off of that, luckily.
Can I ask you a question now that you've been through it, and not asking, for your financial situation, but now having done it, do you wish you would have paid cash for the month?
I wish I would have had
the
cash to pay for it.
Right.
But I mean, you know what? Living a month without it, it came down to I lived 15 years without it. What's a month?
You can make it 30 days, right? So can you tell me a little bit about like your health and your, how you physically feel? Do you have a comparison how you are living now versus how you were living then, and how the impacts that has on you?
I'm not sure that I really notice a whole lot of difference. I mean, I'm not very active in the first place, which, it's just something I never get around to.
You're not running a marathon or something, but
no.
So it's likely that you began at a higher A1c and kept it steady. So then your body adapts and you don't feel the higher blood sugar. Did you feel it when it was coming down, when you made the changes?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel my highs, and I mean, I think I start feeling grudgy, 200 and above, and I can tell when I'm high without even having to look at my CGM. Yeah. I do, because that's what I do, because I look at it pretty often. And I can, there's a big difference between high and low. I can definitely feel that.
You just said something I want to ask you about. You said you look at your CGM often. I was just speaking somewhere this weekend, and someone said to me, how do I stop myself from looking at this data all the time? And I said, lower your high alarm, because then you won't have to wonder if your blood sugar is getting high. It will tell you. And then when you're not getting high, you won't think to look. So it made me wonder what your high alarm's set at.
I have my high alarm set at 180. So anything above 180,
you get
an alarm.
But prior to the alarms, you find yourself checking.
I mean, I look at it fairly often. So I look at it a few different ways. I have the app on my phone. Mm-hmm. I have an iPhone. I also use SugarMate. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I know SugarMate.
I use a Mac app on my work computers at home, so I can, up in the top, I can see what my blood sugar is, what it's doing.
Glucagon? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's SugarMate Glance or something.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I know that one too. All right.
But I mean, I just have it everywhere. I have it on my pump. I just see it everywhere. I mean, I'm not sitting there staring at it.
No, I understand. No, I understand. You're not. No, I get that. But do you see my point though? That if you know the alarm's going to sound prior to it becoming a problem, then you just realize I'll hear the alarm. I don't need to look at it. It'll tell me when it gets there, and that I think that takes away a level of involvement. And there's also terrific research that says that the lower you bring down your high Dexcom alarm, the lower your A1c will go, because, and I'm going to say it here just so other people can hear it, but I know you've listened to the podcast already, but the sooner you react to a high or an impending high, the less insulin you need to stop it most of the time. When you use less insulin, you're less likely to have a low later, and you can bring a 120, for instance, back to a 90 quicker with less insulin than you can affect a 180. And so it's sort of like a little effort up front to lose all that other stuff. And it's a matter of putting your effort in what I think of as a better place. But I'm not telling you how to live your life. It's just, that's how I do it. I don't know if you see any sense in that or not.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. It does make sense and whatnot. I know 180 is just kind of where my doctor and I have figured is a good spot to have the alerts and whatnot. I keep my phone on silent at work, so it's not blaring off.
It vibrates for you.
And that kind of thing, and even at home sometimes. Yeah. But with my pump, I also get vibrates on my pump when it's high or low as well. So, I mean, I have another alert, if you will.
Well, let me add one more thought to it, is that if you, as you bring the alert down, you sort of will start using insulin differently in a way that you don't recognize exactly, right? And so eventually you don't find 180 anymore. Like, I would tell you for certain that what most people considered a 300 to be, that's what I consider 180. Like, that feeling you have when you see 300 is what I see. That's how I feel at 180, because we so infrequently see 180. Yeah, like a high blood sugar here would be like 160. And it's not because we're more involved. I actually think in a weird way it's because we're less involved. But when we're involved, we're using more of what you might consider to be the corrective amount of insulin for the situation. And you only learn that through experience after experience. So here's what I'm telling you, Brent. I think if you move your low alarm to 150 for a month and then move it to 130 after that, the next time you get your A1c checked, it'll be a point lower.
Right.
I would definitely think that. And I would think you wouldn't look at your CGM as much a month or two after that. But that's my guess out loud.
Yeah. So I got my new tandem pump this last November.
Okay.
And it came with the basal IQ. I'm sure I don't know if you've heard of that.
Shuts the basal off if you get low.
Yep.
Right.
And so actually, I just updated my software to Control IQ just last week, actually, 5 days ago.
And this is a closed loop system. Not really. It doesn't have glucagon in it, but it's an algorithm.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So, if my blood sugar gets too high, it increases basal and can even deliver an automatic correction bolus.
Yeah. How are you finding that?
It's going pretty well. I mean, is it perfect? Of course not. Nothing's perfect. I mean, my blood sugar still gets high a little bit sometimes, and I'm still learning it. I'm only 5 days into it.
It's a big adjustment. So yeah, you're not going to have it in 5 days. That's for certain.
Yeah. I would say, give it at least a month to kind of start beginning to learn.
On Friday, it's funny because you and I are recording this in February, and in all honesty, this might be out in August. But tomorrow I'm interviewing somebody who's going to talk about Control IQ too. And she's actually been using it longer. I think she was part of a study. So she might have a little more insight about it. But I think that, I can tell you that from the algorithm stuff that we've done is that it's, so much about the settings being correct so that the algorithm can make good decisions.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll find your way with it. Do you have an expectation that it will bring your A1C down? Is that your hope, or are you just looking to be less involved?
I'm hoping it's going to help with my A1C.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of help bring that down. Not that I've been in a horrible A1C position,
no.
But, I've also looked forward to not having to manage it as well. It's kind of nice that it's got a little bit of automatic kind of control with it. Yeah. I believe it states on their website, that Control IQ is helping to lessen the burden on managing diabetes.
Yeah.
But it does not replace an active role in taking care of it.
It's 100% true. That's my experience. And from everyone I've spoken to so far, if anyone is expecting an algorithm pump to just make diabetes disappear out of your life, I'm afraid that's not what's going to happen. But it should for people with higher, like imagine, past, Brent from 5 years ago having this thing slapped on him with a 12 A1C, and all of a sudden, without really understanding anything else about diabetes, your A1C dropping, 5 points into the 7s, that would be an absolute, miracle for you. And so it's going to be for so many of those people that we talked about, at the beginning, people who just are not as involved with management and understanding, the kind of the tools that help your blood sugar be lower and stable. And the other thing is, and I'm wondering even in 5 days, if you've seen this, is it helping your variability? Are you staying more stable?
Yes, I have been seeing more stability and less spiking and that kind of stuff. The last 24 hours, within the exception of the last 30 minutes, my blood sugar has been pretty flat.
That's lovely. Flat where? Where is it flat at? What number?
So just in range, basically. So I have two ranges. During the day, I'm 70 to 180, and then at night, I'm 80 to 150.
Okay. Yeah, overnight's easier because you're not eating, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it shouldn't be.
Theoretically, right?
Yes, theoretically. But yeah, the last 24 hours on my pump here looks really good. There was only one time where it went high for about 10 minutes, and then it came right back down.
So went over 180 for you, and it got it back under again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was also some help with bolus too that I did on my part.
I was going to say, this thing's only manipulating your basal insulin, right? It's not sending boluses through.
It can send an automatic correction bolus. Of what it calculates, I'm trying to remember from the training video, I think it says it does up to a 60% of the calculated needed bolus.
Okay.
But it can only do that once every hour.
Okay. That doesn't sound bad at all to me.
No, it's actually really great. But it does mainly adjust the basal rate.
Yeah.
Increase it or decrease it or completely stop it.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any lows in the last 5 days?
I have had some lows. They haven't been horrible. I think I've only gotten down to 55, the lowest.
Right. So did you in the beginning think, Control IQ is never going to let me get low? Let me see what it does. And then you got low. Are you going to intervene in the future, I guess, is what I'm asking?
I knew it wouldn't prevent everything. And, it can only do so much. For instance, if I take way too much of a bolus and my blood sugar is dropping fast, right, it can only prevent so much. 100%. If there's way too much insulin on board, it's not going to be able to stop it all the way. Right. The hard thing for me, and this has actually been true with basal IQ too, is not eating. Well, that's not true of just basal IQ. It's just been most of my life, actually. Not eating one too many glucose tablets or that kind of thing shoot you up higher than what you were hoping for.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But I mean, the big adjustment with Control IQ and Basal IQ as well is, that it's also working to help your blood sugar get up to the area that you need to be. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to not want to just chomp down on stuff or, juice box or whatever. So you don't get too low.
Is that a panic feeling or is that a physical feeling when you can't stop?
It's been both. I mean, when you start getting below 50, you start kind of getting that panic almost that it's like, I just need to eat sugar and sugar and sugar and sugar. And so I can get that up and that kind of thing. And then, it goes the other way. And then you kind of start taking more insulin to bring it back down into range.
Yeah. But you feel like a physical need to eat. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I go low, I feel, first of all, I feel just different. I don't know how to explain it to somebody that's not a diabetic. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I put up an episode just today with a girl named Aggie, and she's from Hungary. And she said that when she gets low, her thoughts make sense in her head, but when she speaks them, they don't make sense to other people. It's like she's not saying what she thinks she's saying, but in her mind, she's right. So she can't get her thoughts to come out of her mouth. Has that ever happened to you?
I don't think it's ever happened to me.
No.
I mean, I'm not saying that it won't ever happen. But I mean, it's just, I know, and I keep glucose tablets on me in my pocket all the time. So I always just, had popped one out, put some in my mouth, and it's hard waiting for your blood sugar to go up too, and not to continue just chomping down on the glucose tablets or whatever.
There. Yeah, it's hard to wait. It's hard to wait. I actually said in my talk this weekend, I was like, sometimes you just have to have the balls to wait. Like you just have to be able to just wait a little bit, because if you do, and you're working off of don't get me wrong, not the first time you're low, but once you've got a historical knowledge of how this works and you've done the right things and you're looking at your data and your data is suggesting to you that this is going the way you expect it to, that's the moment when you have to be able to say, okay, let me just stop for a second and let this be and see what happens for a moment.
Yeah.
It's a tough decision to make, but it keeps you off the roller coaster. And there's nothing more true than, the thing that causes lows more than anything are highs. So if you don't get high, sometimes it keeps you from getting low later. And I don't think people think of it that way sometimes. I hear your kids are milling around. Are they all up or just? Yeah.
Well, my 8-year-old's come down a couple of times.
Yeah, I was figuring he wasn't going to make it much longer.
Yeah, he's got school in a little while too. Right, so I hope he's got enough.
Hey, listen, it's not your fault. You're busy. Hey, listen, any more plans for more kids?
I think we're kind of hoping to still have one more.
One more, sure. Yeah. Four sounds like a lot of work.
3's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Well, it better be worth it, because if it's not worth it, what are you going to do? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you said to me, Scott, I have 3, it's a lot of work, and to be honest with you, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, that would be sad. No, I think
yes, it would be sad.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There are definitely days where I wish I had more kids. At last night, I went into Arden's room where she was collecting her clothing that she's grown out of, and she's got a plan to sell it online, mostly because I don't think she wore it very often. And, she's telling me about her plan to make money. I said, so you're going to take the clothes I bought and sell them for less money than I paid for them? I said, why don't you just not buy clothes and steal out of my wallet? Wouldn't that go quicker? But I was looking at her and I thought, that's a woman standing in front of me, a young woman, right? And I said, come here, give me a hug. And I hugged her, and she's like, "Why are you hugging me?" I said, "You look older, and I just want to hug you for a second before you look older again." So you're in a really sweet spot with your kids, 8, 4, and 1. I hope you enjoy all that, because there's no bullshit, man. It goes fast. So yeah.
I try to enjoy it. I'm not, I have ups and downs.
Yeah, please. I had little kids. I know the downs. That's amazing. They're so adorable in the background. You're gonna make people get pregnant, Brent, if you keep hearing that. They can't see what a pain your kids are. They just think they're adorable because they're listening to them. Well, is there anything we didn't say that you were hoping we would talk about?
It's funny. I actually wrote out my whole story and tried to kind of figure out what I should talk about. Let me just look over some of this real quick.
This is lovely. I can't wait to hear what you wrote down that we missed. But Brent, honestly, I'm not bad at this. We probably got to most of it, right?
Yeah, no, we definitely have. I do want to say, taking care of yourself is very important. Especially if you have a family and kids, you want to be around as long as possible. It's important to kind of, take care of yourself. Do your best. Don't beat yourself up for not being perfect, because nobody's perfect, even with the technology that's out there.
Yeah, that's a damn good life lesson. And it's, I think, 100% true. I mean, I can't speak to it from personal experience, obviously, but from talking to so many people, it feels like that it wouldn't be difficult for diabetes to overwhelm you and get the better of you and start feeling like, this is just my life. I can't do any better than this. And it's what's going to be is going to be. But I really do think you can affect it. So, and being positive about it is a good first step.
Yes, definitely. And another thing is be patient. Things take time to learn and that kind of thing. I see on Facebook groups all the time, people complaining about everything that goes wrong and whatnot. Both with, Dexcom and Tandem stuff. Mm-hmm. Things happen, but a lot of the time they don't happen as much as
it looks like it does on Facebook. Yeah, no, Facebook is to complain. It's not, people don't pop on to go, "Oh my God, everything's going so great. Let me tell you about it."
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you it was quite an interesting time on Facebook when Dexcom had their outage a month or two ago, whatever.
I spoke about it too. It was interesting.
It was just so sad to see all the negativity out there.
Mm-hmm. Right away.
Everything.
Yeah, this thing that's doing this amazing thing for me, and not that you don't want it to do better, and not that the company doesn't want to, fill in gaps when it has them. But yeah, it's interesting to see how quickly someone can turn on you. Yeah. It's just, it really does give you that feeling like, wow, I gotta watch my back, because 5 seconds ago I saw this little avatar with this name next to it saying, "Dexcom is the greatest thing that ever happened to me." And 3 hours into the share not working correctly, which, by the way, didn't mean the Dexcom wasn't working. The Dexcom was working fine. It was just It was the share function. And,
it was the share thing.
Yeah, you might have thought that. Well, you know what? I heard less people upset when Australia was on fire. So, seriously, you would think that would make people upset. No.
Yeah.
No, this is where everybody gets upset. But no, I hear you. So just really do your best.
Why is the library books on my backpack?
Now you're not going to think about having 4 kids. And so, but yeah, do your best, right? And it takes time. Sometimes you have to experience things going wrong, so you know what it looks like when they go right. You know how to make them go that way. It just takes time. Like it really does.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Not being dramatic and getting frustrated, if you can help it, is a big help. All right, listen, you go make those kids smarter by sending them to school.
I will.
You'd be very happy I didn't have time to ask you about your magic underwear, because I still want to understand it better than I do right now. And is that an insulting phrase, magic underwear? I'm assuming you call it something different.
Yes, we do call it something different, but I'm not insulted by it.
Listen, apparently it's not insulting, because Mormons continue to come on this podcast. So I'm feeling like I'm doing the right thing here. I really appreciate you doing this, Brent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking the time to let me talk to you and share my story.
100% is my pleasure. I hope you have a great day, and I'll let you know as soon as this is going to come out.
All right. Yeah, I hope you have a good day as well, and I will look forward to when this comes out.
I appreciate that. Say hi to your family for me. Thank you very much.
I will.
Huge thanks to Brent for coming on and sharing his story, and of course to the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and touchedbytype1.org for their support of the Juicebox Podcast. There is a list of all of the advertisers in the show notes of your podcast app and at juiceboxpodcast.com. But you can go to contournext.com/juicebox to find out more about this meter, or touchedbytype1.org to learn about that great organization. Last thing, if you go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox, you can add your voice to some wonderful type 1 diabetes research. And it's super simple to do. Right there on your phone, your tablet, your PC, from your home. You never have to visit a doctor. You never have to visit a site. It's completely HIPAA compliant. You can back out at any time if you change your mind. And it is 1,000,000% anonymous. The answers you provide help people make good decisions about how to help people with type 1 diabetes. That's what your answers can do. Super simple. The ADA has made adjustments to their A1c recommendations for children because of T1D Exchange. Test strips are covered by more insurance companies because of T1D Exchange. The list goes on and on. This research does great stuff. You can support T1D Exchange, support people with type 1 diabetes, and support the podcast. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. The survey didn't take me more than 10 minutes to complete. Thanks to everyone for listening to the podcast and for sharing it with someone else. 2 days ago, the show had its most popular day in the history of the show. It was a day that I will not soon forget. The downloads were astonishing, and I very much thank you all for being ardent listeners and for sharing the show so freely. It means a lot, and you're helping the show to grow. So thank you very much. I'll see you soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.